So often, especially as women, we're taught that it's all in our minds. And it's like, well, it is, but our minds control the body. So yes, but that's why we have to go there.
Welcome to the Nourish by Nature podcast, where we geek out on all things holistic health and mental wellness. I'm your host, Annika Taylor. I'm a holistic wellness practitioner, and I'm here to offer mind-body modalities and real strategies to help you harmonize your moods, boost your energy, and ultimately allow you to be more of your true, authentic self. Let's get nourished. Welcome back to the podcast. It's so good to be with you here today. I have really been looking forward to this interview for such a long time. Beth is my good friend, and she is my own somatic life coach. She is the owner over at Rosewood Woman. I'm going to share all of her info in the show notes so that you can get connected with her if you're interested. And she has been kind enough to share a huge discount code with my listeners. So that's going to be in the show notes as well, 18% off her packages. So you can get that amazing discount code if you so desire. Again, that will be in the show notes for you. And without further ado, let's get to the interview. Today, I'm super excited to welcome my friend Beth Wood to the podcast. So I'm just going to go ahead and intro you, Beth. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Beth is a one-of-a-kind somatic life coach and cycle syncing educator. She gently supports her clients by helping them unblock limiting beliefs and create safety in the body so that they can enjoy true abundance, authenticity, and get unstuck in life. I take a deep breath and just feel more relaxed just saying that. Beth also educates women on how to live in sync with their beautiful menstrual cycles for optimal health and wellness. I think of Beth as a magical wizardess who uses her powers of intuition and empathy to help women alchemize their stored trauma, embody their dreamiest life, and ultimately unleash the most radiant version of themselves. Welcome to the podcast, Beth.
Thank you, friend. That was such a great intro. I'm like, who is this gal? She sounds amazing.
I could have written a lot more, but I'm trying to think, how do I distill? We can't distill ourselves into a few sentences, but those are a few points that make me think of you. And I'm just really, like I said at the beginning, I'm really excited to have you on today because there's just so much we can talk about when we think about subconscious healing and just coming from the perspective of healing our emotions, healing trauma through a somatic lens. And you are a life coach, which I think is so amazing that you blend life coaching with somatic healing and just the whole entire, beautiful menstrual cycle syncing that you teach. It's just such a unique combination. I've never met anyone that does what you do. So I talked a lot. I just want to ask you so many questions. I have so many things. Even though we're really good friends, there's so many things that I want to ask you about. So I'm kind of excited about today.
I love that. That makes me excited. I'm like, yeah, out the way.
So something that I was curious about was really just what moved you towards, being where you're at today, a somatic coach, life coach, and cycle syncing educator. What was kind of the catalyst? Or, I mean, it's usually not just one thing, right? But what was something that kind of stands out to you that kind of just opened up the door to telling you, life was telling you that this is the right direction?
That's a great question. I feel like that's what people always say on podcasts, but genuinely, that's a really good question.
Yeah.
I think, like you said, there are so many different catalysts. I think the primary one that really took me into somatic work, like I've always done alternative therapies and holistic modalities. I've always been into Ayurveda and Chinese medicine. And like, I have always been of the belief that the ancestral wisdom is the stuff that is actually, it's stood the test of time. And that's why I love things like Ayurveda and functional medicine, because a lot of those are the things that have been around for a long time. I think when I started incorporating somatic work was when I started to really get that every time I would go after something with a healing modality, I kept feeling like I was missing something. Like I felt like I would kind of like grasp it and be able to deal with some of the symptoms, but I never felt like I was getting that root. And I kept hearing, root cause is so popular. And I kept hearing that, and I was going to all these different people, and I spent thousands and thousands of dollars on all these different incredible practitioners and chiropractors and all of this stuff. And I was like, it's amazing. And I do see that I need this, but why does this stuff keep coming up? And that was what was really driving me nuts. And I am a seeker of knowledge at the core. And so I was like, I have to figure this out. Like, I just drilled into it. And then I started realizing that, like, oh, I am having these specific thoughts every single time I have a breakout, or every single time I have a stomach ache after I'm eating gluten or dairy or whatever. And I started being able to follow the thoughts, and then getting on top of, I remember very vividly, even as a young kid, I would have some kind of an anxious thought, and then I would have to go lay down at my parents' bedroom and stare up at their ceiling fan and watch their ceiling fan to get out of my head. And that was the only thing that would reduce my stomach pains. And I was like, that, even thinking back to that as a young child, I realized that my body was so innately tuned to take care of me, to make sure that it could heal me, because we are innately designed to heal. It's not something that we have to try so hard for, but we keep undermining our body's ability to heal through our thought processes, through our subconscious beliefs. And then we store all of that stuff because we're in these constant states of fight or flight. And then it's like, I'm constantly sick. I'm constantly having the same thing over and over and over. Why is it, like, I started noticing all of my symptoms were on the left side. I would have a cavity, and then I would have, a pain in my breast, and then I would have my left ovary. And I was like, what in the world is going on? So I love seeing patterns in things. And ultimately, that's what I think led me to somatic work, is that I saw all of these patterns, and I realized it's unique to the individual, not to a bacteria or a parasite or a, fill in the blank. It was like, this is all part of my story. Therefore, I have to get into my own body to understand what it is that's going on, so that I can backtrack and start to kind of see the thread that has been woven into this tapestry that is Beth. So I don't even know that I could say it was like one thing. It was sort of reflecting on a series of things that got me to, like, I need to really work this. And then I became certified in a method called Sembu that's developed by Sunu Method, and that really gave me, like, the language. And then it's just taken off from there with a whole bunch of other learnings and modalities and things that I've sort of added to my tool belt.
What I was actually piqued my interest was when you mentioned this. Is it Sembu, SEMBU method?
Yep.
Yeah. Could you tell us a little bit more about that and what that is?
Yeah. So Sunu Method she was my mentor, and she has a beautiful coaching program called the Institute for Coaching Mastery. And she teaches her specific process called Sembu. And it's essentially working with the entire human experience at every level. And so each letter stands for something. So S stands for somatic, E stands for emotional, M stands for mental or mindset, B stands for behavioral, and then U stands for unconscious or subconscious. So you're really working all different levels of the human experience. So some people will show up more, like, I was not in my emotional body at all for a lot of years. I had a really hard time accessing my emotions. And so if somebody were to work with me on a Sembu level, they would actually start with me probably more in the mental level, because that feels more safe to my nervous system. Because it's like, I like my analytical mind. That is my protector. That's the thing that feels the most safe. So if I was working with somebody like me a few years ago, I would have started with more of a mental or behavioral level of the human experience before I got into maybe somatic work, which is the actual mind-body connection, or more of that emotional work, or doing a lot of subconscious reprogramming or neural reprogramming. And so it's a really beautiful process. She's a clinical psychotherapist, and so she has developed these things over years and years, and it has been the most profound modality that I have found to really work with all different types of people and different types of communication styles and personalities and genders. I like working with men versus women with the Sembu model. I find is really different because our nervous systems work differently. So it's a lot easier for us to go to emotional with women. It's harder to go with that for men because they're in their protector mindset most of the time. They're much more in their analytical mind. So I usually start them more in mental or behavioral. And eventually we get to somatic, but even with that, somatic for men looks very different than somatic for women. So it's a really, really beautiful process. And I'm very thankful to have learned it. It's been the foundation of a lot of my work.
That is so exciting. See, these sorts of things. How did I not know this? I'm learning so much already. It's so exciting. Oh my goodness. And you mentioned something there about your your nervous system feeling safer in the emotional. Now, when I have gone through times in my life of heightened anxiety, like, and I'm talking when I'd have times when there's lots of panic, lots of anxiety, or just recently, actually, I went through a whole immune system cascade. That was my immune system and mast cells were all getting activated after a virus or symptoms of a virus, right? We don't really know what viruses actually are. um, sorry, side note there.
I was like, we
But
can go down that rabbit hole anytime.
should we? We'll save another episode for that one.
Great.
But all the symptoms, my body was going through all the symptoms of viral, and so there was a lot of excess histamine and a lot of activation in my immune system that had brought up a lot of just old patterns of panic and anxiety. And I noticed, and we'll talk about this later because I really want to bring this up again because you helped me work through this. But I noticed that when I had the heightened panic and anxiety, my best friend was just needing to sit on the couch and put on a quiet YouTube video of walking through the British countryside. And it was an interesting experience for me as a practitioner to learn, oh, actually, my body right now feels way safer in my brain. And I can titrate and get into my body when it feels better. But I think that's an important point.
It always comes back to trusting the body, right? Like the body, if we trust the body that it's designed to keep us safe, it's designed to protect us, it's designed to heal us. The body is never doing something to actually undermine our safety or our survivability. That is literally what it's designed for. It's designed to survive, it's designed to reproduce. And so if something is happening where you don't feel it feels uncomfy, it's for a reason. There's always purpose in it. And what happens with a lot of people is we push ourselves past our own evolution by trying to force ourselves into the body or into a detox or whatever. And it's like, when you do that, a lot of the times you're creating even more of a nervous system panic, and your body presents things when it's ready. When your body is ready to deal with a trauma, this is what happens with dissociative trauma or dissociative memory. It's like, I had a traumatic event when I was a child. I didn't know about it till I was 21 because my body, in its intuition, in its wisdom, got rid of the memory for me until my body was healthy enough to deal with it. And I had the capacity to deal with it. So instead of pushing ourselves into our body and being like, okay, you have to feel it, you have to know, you have to remember, you have to know all of the details, you have to figure it out. We so overcomplicate things. And by overcomplicating things, we over exhaust our bodies. We push them beyond their breaking point. And then we wonder why we're in burnout and why we're sick and why it's like, I'm doing all of the things and I feel like I'm just still so sick. Probably because you're pushing it past its breaking point. So sometimes the best thing you can do is just trust that when it arrives, you'll be ready to deal with it and you don't have to force it. So if you feel safer in your mind, coping mechanisms, from drinking and smoking to sucking your thumb as a child, coping mechanisms are there to help you. We just have to get underneath those coping mechanisms to figure out what it is that we're trying to cope with, deal with that, and then the coping mechanism goes away. So if all you can do is sit in front of the TV and watch I do that when I'm having really stressful, overstimulated days. I'm like, I'm going to put on some very calm jazz music of somebody walking through the Cotswolds. I do exactly that. I'm like, I know exactly which video it is on YouTube, and it's like, that helps to calm the nervous system, and it's a coping mechanism, but it's actually supporting you so that your body can calm down. And then when something is ready to come up, whether that's an emotion, whether that's a somatic release, it will come up. You can trust your body that it's going to present the thing to you as long as you keep supporting it and giving it what it needs in order to present things to you. So it's just, I think we overcomplicate stuff. It's like we try so hard, we force everything, which is that super masculine energy. It's very like hustle, very corporate. Like, we're going to force it. We're going to make it happen. We're going to dominate it. And it's like, that's just not necessarily what we need. Sometimes totally. But a lot of the times I think we've kind of swung to the wrong end of the pendulum, and it's like, we don't really need to force ourselves to do everything. The body will do it when it's ready. Like, you don't have to really force yourself to poop, It's like the body just tells you it's time to go. Same thing happens with your emotions. When you're ready, when they come up, they will come up. And if they aren't coming up, and if you're dealing with that for a long time, then there might be a coping mechanism going on. And we need to get underneath that and understand what it is that it's not feeling safe enough to come up. So it, that was like a whole rabbit trail, but
Oh,
there's
but I
just
love it. I love it so much because I think that so many people listening right now will be able to identify and resonate with this. And I think something that helped me when you mentioned coping mechanisms, it's so helpful to know our nervous system is so smart. And there's a reason, like you said, there's a reason that we're going to reach for, cookies when we're not feeling good.
Mhm.
There's a biological reason even, I mean, even just the sugar and the carbs are affecting our neurotransmitters.
Yeah.
But it's just so for me, I think I only learned that probably last year going through one of
Mhm.
my somatic programs was like, hey girl, it's actually okay for you to have coping mechanisms. Like
Yeah.
that's your body loves you so much and it's trying to protect you and keep you
Mhm.
safe and keep you
Mhm.
stable.
Well, and it's just feedback. It's like instead of assigning judgment to the coping mechanism, if we understand it as a message, then we can get the wisdom in it and then we can actually
Mm.
deal with it. But what happens with a lot of people is they try and remove the coping mechanism without changing the environment. And if you don't change the environment, but you remove the coping mechanism, then the person spirals. So you have somebody
Mm.
who's an alcoholic and they stay in that same dangerous situation or they stay in that same, whatever, and you're like, okay, go to AA meetings and get out of alcoholism. It's not that simple because their
Mm-hmm.
bodies are like, no, I'm going to make you have this coping mechanism because it's the only way you can deal with this environment. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really important to know that, like, yeah, if you're, I twiddled my hair forever, forever. I would rip giant chunks of hair out of my head. My parents had to keep my hair really short when I was younger. Like I would just rip and rip and rip. And they didn't
Yeah.
understand that it was anxiety induced, but they tried
Yeah.
to make me stop doing that. And when I stopped doing that, then I started going back to sucking my thumb in my sleep. Because it's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, if you stop doing one thing, if you haven't dealt with the situation or the environment, you're going to just find another way to cope. So instead of trying to keep swapping out coping mechanisms, you've got to get underneath it and understand why that's there. So the coping mechanism operates as the message, as the
Mm.
feedback for you to go, oh, it just makes it really obvious for you to see what's going on. Oh, when this happens, I do this. Okay, great. Now I know exactly why I'm doing that thing. So instead of freaking out and judging that thing, I'm going to go fix the situation and then that thing will naturally fall away. It's like, it's so beautiful. The body is
Mm.
designed so well.
So well. It is, it blows my mind. And I love that you brought up the actually getting under it, right? Because that is the goal to actually understand. Because it's a protective part of us, right? We all have protective parts of us. And really, those protective parts just need to be, they need that connection and they need that
Mhm.
witnessing. And
Yeah.
once we give the protective parts that, and that's something I want to bring up a little bit later in my work with you, but just talking about, you know, healing those parts of us that have been running the show maybe for years. Because I remember learning the first time I ever was really learning about subconscious healing and rewiring our brain and reprogramming. It may have been like 5, 6 years ago. And I heard someone say, our brain is kind of like this computer. It's silly to compare it to computer because you can't. Our brain is so much more amazing.
Yeah.
But it's as if we have this like Windows 95, program running from a belief that we had from when we were a child. And those beliefs are usually formed between the ages of 0 to 7. Is that correct? From
Mm-hmm.
what I learned, from
Yeah.
what we know so far.
Yeah.
Because you're kind of in a hypnagogic state that whole time, and your brain is, your nervous system is learning what is safe and what's not safe. So when people talk about limiting beliefs, I sometimes think, oh, they're not limiting. It's actually our intelligent nervous system has a reason for thinking that.
And thinking too through, not only like we are innately designed. I keep using that, but it's really the best verbiage of it is it's like we are innately designed. We are woven together with genetic wisdom. And so
Mm-hmm.
we have, I always talk about like the genetics, the wisdom of our ancestry, right? It's woven
Mm-hmm.
into your genetic code. This is why when a baby, there's a specific shock fright thing that happens and a baby reacts to it. It's not because it was modeled that, it's because it's innate to its design. So
Mm-hmm.
not only do you have those responses from when you're in utero, from like, okay, I'm sensing things going on in the outside environment, you also are having ancestral wisdom come through your genetic code that also can carry some of those memories, those experiences. Like we know now that like that's actually in your genes. It's literally
Yeah.
woven right in there before you're even born. And so that's part of it too, is you can hold some of that from ancestors, but then also your mom. Until the age of about 3, your nervous system is fully enmeshed in the mother. And so when she's experiencing stress, for sure when she's pregnant, but then also beyond that, baby doesn't know the difference between its nervous system and mom's. It is right there. So if she has a really difficult postpartum, or if she, anything like that, that is why like the sacredness of pregnancy and postpartum is so vital, because baby doesn't know the difference between mom is stressed and I'm stressed. Like I am mom still for a long time. Like that umbilical cord is, for all intents and purposes, still attached until about the age of 3. And that's, in all these different modalities, you see that in the chakra system, where like the chakras start to develop and there's this independence that starts to happen at 3. And you see that in Chinese, like it's all over the place. You see it repeated through all different types of modalities and thought, and yeah, belief systems. But it's like, it's not just your nervous system or your beliefs. It's also the subconscious stuff that has been there from ancestors and from your mom and from your experiences. And it's like, it just, you got to believe that your subconscious brain, which is, 95 to 97% of your brain that you don't have conscious access to, you got to trust that that supercomputer is doing things in its wisdom, even if your conscious mind doesn't understand it. So that's where, like you said, like not pushing it, we call it the scope of or the zone of tolerance, not pushing it into a fight, flight, or freeze mode, but keeping it within that zone of tolerance where you can actually digest the experience that's going on if you're reliving a traumatic memory, trusting that, and then knowing that if the body starts to be like, no, 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 this is too much, not to keep pushing it, to allow it to come back down and feel settled and feel safe. Because if you keep pushing it, you're just re-traumatizing it. And that's what a lot of therapists do and a lot of coaches do, because they don't know that that's something. Or if you're ruminating on thoughts over and over and over and you're just reliving the memory in your all by yourself, that is a really good way to keep the nervous system in an activated state and just further ingrain those traumatic experiences into the system. And we don't need that. That's not healthy.
I am so happy that you brought that part up. I have that in my notes today. Speaking to, like you said, somatic healing for those of us who maybe we've done talk therapy before and it's great, or maybe we've done it and sometimes it just feels like we're just constantly rehashing and it's kind of maybe re-traumatizing. Could we kind of speak to that and give a little bit of validation to those of us who are feeling that?
Yeah. I mean, as somebody who did talk therapy for years and years and years, I think therapy is phenomenal. I love therapists. I have benefited from that. But I haven't benefited from it in the sense that I feel like I was able to resolve a lot. I was able to be witnessed. I was able to be seen without judgment. That is also incredibly healing. And to have some functional tools, like to have some of those mindset tools to support you, and some strategic tools, like, okay, I need to create boundaries with my family. I need to, whatever. And to guide you in that way, in a very conscious, very strategic perspective. I love therapy. I think it can be so beneficial. I am partial to somatic therapists because they can do the structural, strategic stuff while also incorporating something like NET, which is the neuroemotional technique. That's my personal favorite. But you have to be a licensed therapist to actually perform that. And that was something that was like life-changing for me. That was my very first experience of somatic work was NET. And I adore it. I think it's phenomenal. But I did not experience the type of breakthrough that I needed after hundreds of thousands of dollars probably in therapy after a certain amount of time, years and years of therapy for a whole bunch of different things. I never felt like I had breakthrough. I just felt like I was witnessed. And I was like, this is cool, but it doesn't, I feel like I'm just sort of simmering in my stuff instead of feeling like I'm actually getting it out. And so, again, I think there are certain things that I think are best to start with therapy if it is a really big traumatic thing that your nervous system doesn't have to before, but it happened and you need to talk through it and just be in that analytical mind. I think it's phenomenal to start there if there's not safety in the body yet. But past that, in order to really get into stuff, I think there is nothing like somatic work. And it comes in all sorts of forms too. Like for some people, somatic work is going to start with dancing. or it's going to start with just bouncing on a trampoline. Like that's actually somatic work. You're starting to change the neural pathways by that movement. It's just movement. And well, that's a whole other thing. In nature, we would have somatic experiencing and somatic work
Right.
if we were living a wild wild life, like as we were designed, because there's different motions, cross body motions, that's changing the brain pathways. And there's all sorts of things that if we were living outside in nature, we would not probably need any of these things because our bodies are designed to actually support us somatically.
Wow. Yeah.
That's like a whole, crawling, like babies crawling, that is developing their somatic experience. It's literally them connecting their body to their brain through these different cross body motions.
Yes, and that's something that they will teach to us adults,
Mhm.
that the crawling to actually
Mhm.
help our brains develop,
Mhm.
for specific
Yeah.
situations. So
Or
I found that so
tackling.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like there was this, I am not going to quote the study well because I don't know exactly what it was. I just saw it in passing, but something to do with laying underneath a tree and looking up into like this, the sun coming down through the leaves. As you're watching that starts to actually change your nervous system and rework different things in your brain. And it's like, we're just designed when you look up, like you taught me that when you look up and, right and then left, it like starts to activate the parasympathetic. And it's like
Yeah.
our bodies are so brilliant and we just don't have to try that hard. It can be so simple. And I love somatic work because it gets you back into what your body's already designed to do. You don't need all of the external forces and, all of the things and all of the pills and all of the people to talk to. It's like your body knows all we're doing is we're revealing it. All we're doing is we're opening it up to what it already knows so that you are actually aware and capable of supporting yourself through your natural design. And it really gets to be so simple. It doesn't have to be overcomplicated.
And it can feel really empowering to finally hear someone say, actually, you have everything that you need in you already to heal.
Yeah.
It can feel so empowering, especially not hearing that very often. It's always about, well, there's probably one root cause that you didn't explore yet, which I'm a functional medicine practitioner. I do believe in root causes, but we can, like you said, overcomplicate things so much. And I've done it to myself where I'm like, gosh, if I just knew that one thing, or is it just that parasite cleanse that I need to do? And now I really lean towards, that's why I brought polyvagal theory in somatic modalities also into my package, because I didn't want to just offer, hey, we're not just going to do your hair tissue or your blood work and look at you from just the biology. We're going to work with your nervous system. Because resetting that first can actually change our blood work as well. I've one of my teachers said she'd always start with just 21 days of doing really simple somatic practices, which are the things that I teach in my program. And then she'd run blood work, and it would, before and after. And it was such a difference, just bringing the stress hormones down, letting the body feel safe. So just echoing that simplicity is so important.
Yeah.
So important.
Yeah. Well, and using I love doing the HTMA. I loved being able to be like, here's what I think is going on. And I remember very specifically we did it with the calcium shell thing. I had this whole experience, and it's far enough away now I'm trying to remember exactly what happened, but I remember I was having this whole experience and I was working something somatically as far as it was like, I just feel like I'm like closed off and I don't feel like I want to be, oh, that's what it was. I don't want to be seen by the outside world. Right? Is that what it was?
You told me I had a somatic experience. You're like, I was doing the somatic practice this morning, and I literally felt like I was like inside this egg, this eggshell. That's why it was really cool, because the pattern on the HTMA was the calcium shell, which is an intelligent mechanism that our body will do to hold on to more calcium to numb excess emotions because it's too much. And your body is so intelligent. And so when I see that with women, it's like, oh, wow. It's not like, oh my gosh, there's something wrong with you. Let's fix this really fast. Yeah, we will help to rebalance with minerals. But that's where I knew you were already doing the work. So it's like, if we ran another one, I would not be surprised if that calcium shell was already dissolved.
Well, and it was just so beautiful because it was like the types of things that you do with the testing, the beauty of testing is to validate the experience. It's another version of witnessing. And then also to give those next little tools. It's like, okay, you know the direction you're going. We're going to make sure that the you're on a road. I like having analogies.
Yes.
You're on a road, you have your car, everything's good, and then you use functional medicine to like fill up the gas and to make sure that all of the tires are balanced and to make sure that the air pressure is good. It's like it allows you to do your journey safely, and it allows you to have all of the tools that you need to make sure that it is as smooth and as efficient and quick as possible. But it's like the vehicle is you, and you are capable of you have all of the wisdom, you have the structure, you have everything you need, and then you use tools to validate it and be like, okay, yep, we've checked all of the tire pressure, everything is good. Oh, this one's a little low, we're going to fill it up. That's all it is. So it's like it gets to work really synergistically with the body rather than dominating the body and being like, no, you don't know anything, shut up, we're going to just numb you and medicate you and do all of the things. It's like, no, I'm actually coming alongside you to support you in what you're already doing. That's what I love about those types of things. And that's exactly what that experience was for me, where it was like, it was this eggshell. And yeah, it was like, I was dealing with, I don't want to be seen. I feel like I can't be seen. I feel like I can't break out of something. And you were like, oh, well, yeah, you're displaying this thing called the calcium shell. And you explained it to me. And I just remember getting off the phone and crying because I was like, I feel so witnessed and seen. And like, she gets it. And I'm not crazy. It validates that experience for us that so often, especially as women, we're taught that it's all in our minds. And it's like, well, it is, but our minds control the body. Right. So yes, but that's why we have to go there, because if we don't go there, your 97% of your brain is the thing that's controlling your breathing and your reproduction, your digestion. Like that's important to deal with because the body is only a reflection of the mind and vice versa. So it's like, we don't want to eliminate one or the other. We have to use it synergistically. We have to approach the body in a full woman, full human experience. And so that's why I think like functional medicine with somatic work it's perfect. It's the perfect marriage.
Chef's kiss.
Chef's kiss. So good. Well, it's beautiful to be able to go, like, there's this concept. One of my favorite books is Eastern Body, Western Mind. And it talks about, again, the whole body, or actually a better parallel is the idea of the mechanic versus the gardener. So with Western medicine, we often look at the body as a mechanic. It's like, here's each individual part. And if we take this part out, we'll fix it. And then we'll put a new part back in, or we'll put that fixed part back in or whatever. But the reality is that the human being it's a garden, it's an ecosystem. And so one thing doesn't work without the other. And so when you have something like functional medicine, that's looking at like, okay, how is the soil? How is there enough nutrients in the soil? Is it getting enough water? Are we getting enough sunlight? And then with, like somatic work, it's like, okay, how's the integrity of the plant? Are the root systems going deep enough? Are they spread out enough? Are there rocks in the way? Like we're looking, are there any predators? Are there pests? Are there, it's like, we're looking at it from an ecosystem perspective. And so like you said, it's not chicken or the egg. It can't be one or the other. It has to be the whole thing. But if the integrity of the plant is compromised, it doesn't matter what nutrients you give it. You have to make sure that the integrity of the plant is there. And also, if the integrity of the plant is there, but there's not enough nutrients, it doesn't really matter because the plant's not going to be able to get what it needs to continue growing. So it's this really interesting, like, again, that's why I love the Senbu model, because it's dealing with the entire human experience and then taking it even a step further with something like German New Medicine or whatever, where it's really connecting those two even more deeply. It's just really beautiful that there are pieces of science that are starting to catch up with the human
starting
body.
to.
Like we're trying to, but I love the testing and I love the specific, like isolated nutrient, support so that you really can be targeted so that you don't have to do so much guesswork. Because that's what gets us overloaded is we're trying to figure it all out with our analytical mind. And the beauty of testing is it's like, here it is. Here is the map. You're the car. We're giving you the nutrients. Here's the map. Go. Have fun. And it's just so much easier. It doesn't have to be so complicated.
Doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be complicated. And believe me, I have complicated it for myself, so I can speak from experience.
Me too. Yeah. So many times.
And that is why we are doing the work that we're doing. Because I know your heart, and I know that you want to bring this healing to so many women and just empower them to just be able to live their lives authentically and fully. Because it reminded me the past 3 months, again, when you're feeling crappy, gosh, you can't be yourself. You can't be who you want to be and represent yourself the way you want to in the world, whatever that is.
Yeah. Yeah, much less,
Um,
yeah, your business or as a mom or it's like it's hard
right.
enough to just maintain my own mental clarity, much less than also invest in other people. And you want to be able to because that's what we love to do, is to love on our
Exactly.
people. And then that goes into like an identity thing because then we can't do what we really want to do. And yeah, it's just
Yes.
a nasty spiral. Yeah.
Um, which brings me kind of to, you had reached out and I had told you we were going to record this podcast months ago. And I had texted Beth and said, hey, I can't record this morning. I didn't sleep last night and I have been having cycling panic attacks, which hasn't happened in 6 years. And you're like, girl, I want to jump on a call and like, we will figure this out. And to be honest, part of me was like, you don't understand. Like, this is probably, I mean, immune system. And like, you don't understand. Like, we can't just get on a call and fix this. And we did actually. So is it okay if I share a little bit
Oh
about that
yeah,
experience?
absolutely.
I just want everyone to know how fun it is to work with you. So I'm just going to share this. So, like I said, I was having a lot of anxiety and it kept waking me up in the middle of the night. Um, just when you'll wake up and your heart's pounding, not fun. But so we did the somatic, I want to almost just call it like a journey. And it felt like a somatic embodiment journey where we just were asking my body, yeah, where's that coming up for you? You were asking me the different parts of myself. So there was like this deeper wisdom, and it felt like it was on the right side, this kind of like wizardress woman who just wanted to make sure that I was taken care of, that I was, I had everything I needed. She was very cautious, but also very deep and wise. And it felt more like the yin side of me. And then this creative side of me were asking, and she was on the left side. And I remember you said, like, what would her name be? And I was like, her name's Wendy. She's creative, she's artistic, and I don't know her as well. Like, she's not as safe. She likes to take risks, and she likes to just, be spontaneous. And I could hear her speaking to me is like, hey, the thing that you're worried about, because it came up right away in the call, the thing that you're worried about, you don't have to be worried about it. Like, you're safe to experience that. You're safe to move forward and do the thing you want to do if and when you want to, when the right timing comes. Um, and it was just so beautiful to access these two parts of me. And the reason I'm telling the story is because that day, the anxiety and the panic, because it was cycling, it was gone. And I slept that night. And the feeling, if you've ever experienced panic and anxiety, the feeling of having that high reactivity in your nervous system and then suddenly being in the parasympathetic and you can breathe and relax again, that was a gift that I could never repay you for. And so I texted you. I waited a couple days because, like, is this real?
I'm gonna stick. Yeah.
And just through just accessing my nervous system and witnessing it and allowing that creative part of me that wanted to come up and be heard and be seen, um, that was what brought me relief. And you had said the reason that you thought that I was waking up as soon as my head would hit the pillow and I'd fall asleep was because my brain was starting to process and my body wasn't ready for my brain to be able to speak to me. It was like every time I'd fall asleep, my body would wake me up because it's like, wait, we don't want to process that yet. We don't feel safe to. And I thought that was a really nice perspective because we don't hear that all the time. It could be a blood sugar thing. It could be a combination of things, right? But I really appreciated that, being able to go deep with you. And it didn't feel scary. It didn't feel, like you get on the call and Beth's just calmly guiding you through exactly what you need that day. So I just wanted to share that to just kind of illustrate how simple, but how deep and impactful that can
Yeah.
be.
It's so cool. It's just like what I love. I always tell people I feel like I have the best job in the world because what I love is it's like we literally get to just go into a journey through your psyche and like what's here. And it's not like you said, it's like it doesn't have to be scary. Because I remember being in therapy and being like, you're asking me questions I'm not going to answer truthfully. I'm going to
Yes.
skirt around this. I will not answer it. And the beauty with something like somatic work is if you experience that resistance, we work with the resistance. So we're not ever pushing you beyond your body's capability, or not capability, but like capacity in the moment to
Oh,
deal
yeah.
with everything. And so it doesn't have to be scary. It can feel uncomfortable sometimes if you're like, oh, I didn't think that was going to come up. Okay, here we are.
Sure.
That's totally normal. but it doesn't have to feel scary. And because if it's scary, that's usually your body like, no, this isn't for me. I really am not of the belief that I think if it's scary and exciting, that's a yes. That's a somatic yes. It's like a whole body. Okay, it's a little scary because it's a growth edge, but it's a yes. If it's scary and contracting, constrictive, that's usually a no. And a lot of the times we have those moments where it's like the body's saying no, and then we undermine our body's trust in us by pushing beyond it. And so I think it's so important to be able to start maintaining that. And then, like we talked about, it's like if your body, so much of it is hypothetical because it's like, okay, based off of your experience, here's what I think, and then let me know if it lands. And like it's very much just like a resonance conversation, which is why it's so cool. Because again, like the science, I can't give you the science, but if it's working for you, your body and your brain are more intelligent than the science that we have. So we have to trust that first. And so being able to be like, okay, so is it that you're going into the hypnagogic state where it's like you're starting to drop into more of a calm state and you can start to process things clearly and the protector's coming up? Is it this protector part? And you're like, yeah, that's amazing because that protector is there. I always say it's guard dogs at the gate of your dreams. Like that protector is there for a reason. It's guarding something very important. So we don't want to push past that. We want to acknowledge that there's something there to protect and get curious about what might it be protecting. And then all of a sudden everything dissolves because it's like, hey, you're being witnessed. It's literally just awareness and things start to just melt away. And so by the time we get something like anxiety or depression or anything like that, that's usually like that guard dog is getting so loud because we've been ignoring it and we've been pushing it to the side. And it's like, it's just going to get louder and louder and louder until we sit there and we actually listen to it. And so again, it gets to be simple. What's here? What are you experiencing? And then like kind of personifying those archetypes that come through and saying, okay, windy, or is it, this other like cool magey kind of vibe? Like, who is that to you? And it's just so cool because I get to just kind of come along the journey and feel like, oh, I've never met this version of you or this part of you. This is so exciting. Let's get to know each other better. It's just so cool. And again, it's easy. It's simple. It's like we're not going into it with an agenda. We're going into it with curiosity. And that opens up the world of possibilities for your experience. And it just gets to be so magical instead of this like dark, terrifying experience.
I love that because those of us who have experienced any type of trauma in our past, we are not going to be attracted to a dark, scary therapy. Right? We don't want that. We want the light, the magical, the airy, the empowering and hopeful. And so that's what just brings me so much joy working with you. And so grateful that we live in a time where, I mean, this has always been available to us, but we live in a time where it's actually out there. We can, educate ourselves about it. It's becoming more and more, I don't want to say mainstream, but it's out there.
Yeah, it's more
as a
available
modality.
for sure. Yeah. Well, and like just to kind of like close that loop too, is I think, I had last night where I didn't sleep and I was going through the like, okay, it could be this, but my brain is so foggy because I'm so sleep deprived that I was like, okay, Annika told me this, and this about blood sugar. And we had talked about maybe me eating later in the evening to have like, maybe I don't have like my blood sugar is dipping in the night and that's what's keeping me up and blah, blah, blah. And I thought about that this morning and realized that was probably what was going on because I was looking at my eating habits and I was looking at how just my cortisol is doing different things. And so I'm not hungry in the morning. So then I'm hungry at night, but I'm not hungry late enough. This whole thing. So then it's like you bring that full circle. And you're the one who came to mind because I was like, okay, what would Annika tell me right now? Oh, I probably need to try eating later. And I really need to make sure that I'm eating first thing in the morning. And I need to stop the early morning coffee, which I was not doing for a long time. And then I started it back up and here we are.
Yes.
So it's like having the clarity and also having the curiosity. I think that's the beauty of these two things is like the somatic is the curiosity to go deep. And then the clarity comes through like the functional medicine side and being able to just have a clear path when everything else feels complicated. Just go there.
I love this conversation so much. So I think what I'm going to do is just kind of wrap it up with where can people find you? How can people work with you? Give us all the goodies.
Yeah. Okay. So I am Rosewood Woman everywhere. So it's woman with an A, WOMAN. Rosewood Woman on Instagram, on Facebook, on
.com.
That's the other one. And then I have a podcast, Freely Feminine.
Yeah.
I need to do season 3. We're on season 2 and we're kind of on a pause. So we're going to do some more podcasting soon. And Annika has been on that. So she's a guest on one of those not too long ago. So yeah, that's where you can find me. And then I am in the DMs constantly. It is very important to me to actually reach out to every one of my followers. So I have personal connection with everybody. And so I am available through message on there, but right now I'm working really with 2 specific programs. So I have my Gentle Business Jumpstart, which is the one that you went through, which is a 12-week start or scale your feminine focused company. So that is for small business owners, service providers, coaches, entrepreneurs, that really allows you to develop a business that is designed for not only your female biology from a cycle syncing perspective. Women work so differently than men. We have a 28-day infradian rhythm that changes us all month long. So we're really learning how to design a business for your biology, but then also for our energy, for the way that we are in our feminine, in our receiver mode, in our creatrix energy. It's a completely different way of doing business and it feels much more nourishing. So that's kind of my primary. And then I do have one-to-one somatic coaching, which is just life coaching. And that is all of the stuff that Annika and I were talking about today. And it's so much fun. And it's just taking you on a journey back home to yourself, from a feminine lens. So that is, the other one that I do. And those are my 2 primaries right now. And we've got some retreats coming up this year, but those are on the DL until we have official dates, but they are coming. They'll be in Montana most likely, but those are coming.
Okay. After we finish this podcast, you need to tell me all the details.
Tell you all about it.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all of this information so that you can easily get to rosewoodwoman.com or wherever you're trying to get to. I'm going to put all this in the show notes. So it's really easy to reach Beth. Yeah, again, I went through the Gentle Business Jumpstart. It was the most beautiful journey for my business. And yeah, one-on-one somatic coaching, just book it. Because like you said, it's just a journey back to yourself. Thank you so much, my darling friend, for coming on today. Such a joy. Thanks so much for listening today. And hey, if you feel like you've tried everything to resolve symptoms of anxiety, burnout, or digestive issues, and you're still not feeling your best, you're not alone. I know exactly how frustrating it can be trying to figure it all out, and I want you to know you can feel better within weeks, not years, and live life on your own terms again. That's why I created the Stress Reset program, which includes all the functional testing, the holistic support, and the nervous system healing to help you thrive mentally, emotionally, and physically. It's time to feel present, calm, and alive again with a gentle, safe, and natural approach. Just book a free call with me or reach out to me on my contact page at nourishedbynature.co. That's nourishedbynature.co if you'd like to learn more.